My name is Mark Ellis, and welcome to The View from My Side of the Fence. I know men who are my age who have spent hours and hours wishing that they could live their lives over again. They live in a fantasy world of wishing they could go back and relive the joys of their youth, wishing that they had bought shares in Amazon or Microsoft, wishing that they had not done the stupid things they did. Well, I've got good news for you. You can relive your life. I'm not talking about stepping into a time machine or how to find the fountain of youth. I'm talking about investing your life and your experiences in the lives of young men. We can see this in the life of Solomon when we read Ecclesiastes. After recounting his successes and horrific failures, he concluded his book with these words for younger men. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, when you will say, I have no delight in them, before the sun, the light, the moon, and the stars are darkened, and clouds return after the rain. Remember him before the silver cord is broken, and the golden bowl is crushed, the pitcher by the well is shattered, and the wheel at the cistern is crushed. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity. I'm a seminary professor, and so I have regular contact with men between the ages of 18 and 40, many of whom are just beginning their studies, their professions, their marriages, and their families. And many of these men do not have older men in their lives who are actively guiding them or who are capable of doing so. I want to encourage you to get out of your dream world and invest in the lives of young men like these. Help them learn from your successes. When I was 36, the mission board I was with pulled me out of the seminary and put me in a city on the backside of the Amazon jungle and told me to plant churches. I didn't know anything about planting churches. I was scared to death, and there was no one around to teach me how. So I enrolled in the School of Hard Knocks, made a lot of mistakes, but as my friend Earl Taylor likes to say, sometimes even a blind pig finds an acorn, and I ended up planting 4 churches. By the grace of God, 2 of them became strong, vibrant churches, and I also learned a ton from the 2 which didn't. I find it interesting that I have never been asked by my students about my GPA at Dallas Theological Seminary, but I have often been challenged by a student with the question, have you ever planted a church? Well, yes, I have. And let me tell you what I learned from the experience. If you are at the peak of your career, or even if your career has peaked, you can relive your successes and avoid your failures through mentoring a younger man. Something else I've learned is that most people do not necessarily like to hear about other people's successes. They are, however, tremendously encouraged by our mistakes and what we learn from them. Have you ever been fired from a job, cheated on your wife, been divorced? Have you had your heart broken by one of your children? Did you learn anything from those experiences? Can you help a younger man not to repeat your mistakes? My friend, even your failures have tremendous value. So look around you. Is there a younger man at church who is struggling with his marriage or raising his children? If you're still employed, is there a younger man coming up in the ranks that you can help find his way? If you are retired, did you learn anything of value in your 30 or 40 years of work? Of course you did. So don't let your experiences die with you. What about one of those kids who's running around raising Cain in your neighborhood? Instead of calling the police, call him over to your house. One man who powerfully affected my life was Mr. Harris, who lived across the street. He had ALS and asked me to cut his grass for him. He taught me how to care for a mower, how to value doing a good job by gently pointing out the places I'd missed. And when I was done, he gave me a glass of lemonade and sat with me on his porch swing, and we talked about life. In 1969, he would have been about 80 years old. He taught me about hitching mules and plowing with mules and how they paved the streets in Lincoln, Nebraska. But he also taught me about perseverance, such as when he described digging out his basement 1 bucket at a time. He taught me about being careful, like when the gas station attendant cheated me out of a quarter of a gallon of gasoline. One other example. I'm now 60 years old, and I have 9 grandchildren. I live in Brazil, and about the only hard thing about living in Brazil is that I miss my children and my grandchildren. Be the grandpa of your grandkids' dreams. Be the grandpa they're going to remember fondly and talk about with misty eyes and a warm heart when they grow old. It was my grandfather who taught me how to shoot a revolver, a rifle, a shotgun, showed me how to fabricate a barrel for a Luger pistol from a block of steel in the workshop he had in his basement, who taught me how to use a bait caster and throw a fly. Don't just take your kids fishing and bowling and to the zoo. Use those moments to earn their love and trust, and then use that trust to help them find their way. I remember even as a small child going to Oak Hill Presbyterian Church with my grandfather, and he would give me a nickel and tell me to put it in the offering and tell me how important it was to honor God with our money. He had the Remington franchise for southern Indiana and West Kentucky and took me with him on those trips. And during those times, we talked about life. He talked with me about my girl problems and warned me about loose ladies. We talked about what it was like to go through the Great Depression, about trials and errors in starting his business, and the need to be careful with one's money. My grandfather wasn't perfect. Anyone who knew him can tell you about his flaws. But he invested in my life, and the day of his funeral, I cried like a baby. So friend, don't waste your life sitting around dreaming about the past. Don't take your successes and failures with you to the grave. You can live your life over. Invest your life's experiences in the lives of younger men. My name is Mark Ellis, and thank you for visiting me on The View from My Side of the Fence.